Hi, my name's Tyler Brown. I live in central Vermont and we're down here on a trout stream in southern Vermont. And I'm going to be talking about how to use streamers while fly fishing. So a streamer is a type of fly. It rides underwater and it typically imitates like a bait fish, a crayfish, a sculpin, any kind of bigger minnow or anything that lives underwater. And with streamer fishing, you're really targeting, for the most part, those bigger fish. And in the fall time is a great time to tie on a nice big streamer and target some big brown trout. As the temperature starts to cool and the days shorten, those fish are getting ready to spawn and they become really aggressive, and they often will chase down anything that swims in front of their face. So it's a pretty basic setup to get started with throwing streamers. Your typical 9-foot 6-weight would be a perfect streamer rod. And then for a line, I do have a sink tip line. That sink tip really helps get that fly down toward the bottom into what they call the strike zone. So it gets that fly into the fish's face sooner. From the fly line, I have about a 7-foot fluorocarbon leader, and it's in a 0X. I like that stronger leader. That way I don't have to worry about breaking it off on a big fish, and I can just kind of get that fish out of the woody cover. Because as you'll see, we're going to be fishing around some good structure, and if I hook into a fish, I want to be able to pull that fish away from that and not lose it in those trees. And then from my leader, I have a non-slip loop connection that I tie to the fly, and I really like that loop knot because it allows the fly to move a little more freely in the current. If I were to use like an improved clinch knot, you lose some of that movement in the fly. Allowing that fly to move naturally in the current elicits a lot of strikes from fish. All right, so we have this nice pool here. There's a lot of nice woody debris there. So when I first approach a spot to fish, I usually like to stand back from the water just for a minute and kind of observe what's going on. Because sometimes, especially later in the fall, you'll have fish that are moving upriver to find a good place to spawn. So they may not necessarily be right next to the cover. And if you go running in there, you're likely to spook them. It's fairly shallow through here, so I'm going to focus on just up toward that woody debris. And I've tied on a olive and orange clouser that I'm going to use today. So I'm just going to start fishing my way upstream. I typically work from downstream to upstream because fish are usually oriented facing the current. You can, when the conditions are right, when the water's rising and off color, you can fish facing downstream, but today with the water being fairly low and clear, we're going to work our way upstream. If you can get 2 to 3 good accurate casts close to the cover, and if you don't have a fish show itself or take the streamer at that point, you can usually move on. Again, we're looking for the big aggressive fish, typically brown trout, but there are rainbows in here as well. Sometimes the fish like it stripped real slow, other times they want it stripped pretty aggressively. And then when the water's pretty cold, you can also dead drift your streamers. And that's simply just tossing it out there and letting the current bring it back down, and you're just stripping in the slack. With the fall time, the river temperatures are probably 50s or 60s, so those fish are going to be pretty active right now. With this kind of fishing, it's really not a numbers game. You're probably not going to catch many fish in an outing unless conditions are just right, which they do line up that way sometimes. But again, you're really looking for those bigger aggressive fish in the water. All right, so with this spot here, standing kind of at the head of this, or the tail of the riffle into this pool, and there's some nice woody debris there. And I can see some deeper water out there. So I'm actually gonna cast out about 90 degrees and let my fly swing down into that pool and see if we can get a fish that way. Cast it right out into the current, strip off a little extra line. And strip it back to you. Oh, there we go. There's a fish. So with a fish like this, it's not a real big fish. So I'm just gonna fight it on the off of the reel and just strip in line. This is actually a nice looking rainbow. And there we go. Ah, that was a decent fish.